Perhaps my favourite thing about WRC so far is the stages. It's clear that some serious love and effort has gone into them, with 17 locations, each with their own distinct vibe and 30-kilometre layout. They're rendered in a staggering amount of detail for the sheer size of them. It makes you believe they're truly a one-to-one, almost laser-scanned recreation that includes so much detail that most of it isn't visible to the naked eye. In pretty much every rally game to date, these stages would have been bastardized, making them flatter, wider, straighter, and overall removing any semblance of a challenge, but not in WRC. These stages are actually claustrophobic and actually technically challenging. And don't just take my word for it, here's a direct comparison of the game versus real life. This Japanese stage is easily one of my favourites, and it encapsulates everything I love about driving roads like these. There's never a moment of respite. It's a constant barrage of technical, undulating, one-car wide road, large sweeping corners that force you to balance the car on a knife's edge, and hairpins that would make a regular non-rallyman cry if he was in the passenger seat. Even the tiny sections of straights are packed with the danger of elevation changes, bumps, and clicks which you need to get spot on if you don't want to crash. It doesn't let up when you reach the foot of the mountain either, as you'll be darting through a quaint Japanish village, praying you don't lose control and end up in someone's front room. It's clear whoever made these stages has a keen attention to detail, with small little features that only a handful of people would probably ever look at and appreciate. And if you ever get bored of looking at the stunning scenery, you can even set the season to winter, which will make Japan a lovely winter wonderland. But it'll also double the challenge. It does this by decreasing your view to about 50 feet and adding patches of compacted snow and ice which will pull you into the Japanish wilderness to do some in-detail observations of the local trees. Hey Dad, can we drive the Finnish rally? No son, we have the Finnish rally at home. Estonia. This pretty much sums up both the Finnish and Estonian rallies, both being Nordic countries and practically bordering each other if you ignore the massive expanse of water. There's not much to separate them. I'm sure I don't need to give you the dossier on Finland. It's one of the most infamous rallies, full of high speed and narrow sections and jumps cocooned by the dense, perilous forest. And Estonia is pretty much the version from Wish. It's wider, has more grip, and less jumps. Although your average speed will be higher at Estonia, and it does occasionally have some hairily narrow sections complemented by massive jumps that desperately want to kill you, and even a racetrack. It's still a very fun location, but nothing beats the constant excitement of Finland. Mexico. It's one of the most techie rallies in the game, bringing pretty much every rally call-out that exists, giving your ears a real workout, from bumps and jumps to water splashes and sheer drops. The road is secretive too, tucking all of its most tricky features behind crests that place you directly on top of them, with no help from the co-driver. At this point I hate to liken roads to roller coasters, because it's a very tired simile. But if any road replicates the vertical switchbacking of an amusement ride, it's Mexico. It feels as though it was purposely designed to not only be hard, but thrilling too. It's not one where you can fluke a blindingly fast time. You have to learn Mexico if you want to get anywhere respectable on the leaderboards. Even pushing slightly too hard without having a clue about where you're going will result in you tumbling down the mountains and getting cacti lodged in your windshield. Rally Chile is one I feel will be overlooked by most, and it's the one that reminds me most of my home rally, Wales, which I'm sorely missing in this game. Please add it. It snakes through mountainous forest and logging operations. It's all about setting a rhythm at Chile, which makes it an incredibly fun stage when you finally settle into one, as you don't need to think much about what is happening. At times it practically feels like the car is driving itself, as the natural weight transfers pull the car around series of corners. It flows beautifully, but don't think it's without its own challenges because of this. You can swing from steep uphills to downhills, sometimes within seconds of each other. This changes the dynamics of the car massively, which you have to account for. Your braking distances, the way the car delivers power, how the weight of the cars move, and pretty much everything else will be constantly shifting with the road. Not to mention, the stage is littered with these massive log piles, and if you've ever played a rally game, you know these things are magnetic to rally cars, so watch out for them. And what kind of video would this be if it was without Kenya? I'm sure you've heard enough about it already from me and Mr. Sim Racing himself, so I'm going to tell you a real world story about it instead. Safari Rally Kenya is easily the most unique in the game, and it harks back to the days when rallying started, where it wasn't about setting lightning fast times with 3 Gs of downforce gluing you to the road. It was simply timed off-roading, where setting times weren't actually your main concern. It was getting to the finish line intact. In fact, the Kenyan rally was so brutal, with the searing heat, the sand that trapped tyres, and the rugged road that literally shook cars apart as they traversed it, many cars wouldn't even finish the rally. In the days of Group B, the almighty Audi Quattro, Ford RS200, Peugeot, Lancia and MG would fail to complete it year in, year out. But there was one forgotten about car, the Toyota Celica. It pushed around the same horsepower as the Quattro, but with just half the driven wheels. And with 1980s tyres, suspension, brakes and other stuff, it was an absolute handful to drive and, needless to say, not very successful. Now, to reinforce the fact that it wasn't successful, the Celica isn't in this game, so let's just pretend this BMW is slightly less cool looking, front-engined and plastered with Toyota logos. The wheels would be spinning in pretty much any gear at any RPM. You couldn't put the power down at all, even in a straight line. It required a throttle technique akin to that on a push bike. You couldn't get up to speed instantly, you slowly, steadily had to build momentum. And by the time you built up any decent speed, it was just time to slow down again. It wasn't particularly light either, weighing just 70 kilograms less than the Quattro, making it handle like an absolute hog through the corners without the 2 extra driven wheels it so desperately needed to pull itself around them. The Celica was cumbersome, powerful and unwieldy, and in its entire 3 years in the WRC, it saw only a handful of wins. But if you take a closer look, you'll see something pretty amazing. Every single victory the Celica earned was in Africa, which is strange considering its hugely disadvantaged design. How could this Toyota be winning year in, year out on the hardest rally known to man, against the absolute Hall of Fame which is Group B? Fortunately for Toyota's already established reputation, it was because the thing was so damn reliable. Whilst other cars were being shook loose with bolts ejecting themselves over every jump, both man and machine overheating in the scorching heat, and getting stuck in 4-foot deep potholes, the Celica powered on due to its sheer reliability, overtaking every single faster car as they were stranded on the side of the road. This sheer hardiness and reliability was rewarded with a win at every single safari rally it attended, which earned the Celica the nickname King of Africa. To me, this is the perfect summary of the Safari Rally, and you can go and experience it in WRC. I covered the actual in-game stage in this video right here, so you can go and watch that if you want to.